State of Play is here to talk about a variety of topics, and I'd like to welcome Stephanie Hansen from the law firm of Young, Conaway, Sargent and Taylor, and of course Charlie Copeland, president of Associates International, a graphic and printing company. Now we want to start with the gun debate. Last week we devoted our first look to the topic, and want to take this time to get your input, and if you can tell me whether or not this will be an upstate or downstate battle.
An upstate or a downstate battle? Well, I think that I think the thoughts on gun control are certainly different upstate than downstate. And I think that in many ways, again, Delaware is like a microcosm of what's going on nationally. Right now, I think that it's probably most important for us to get some unbiased scientific look at gun control and mental health issues. And I think that that's something that the Obama administration is talking about now, and using the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, to actually do the study, which I think is an important thing to do, because right now what we have is we've got on the right, we have the folks on the right that are very pro-gun, the NRA, and then we've got the folks on the left that are much more liberal. So we've got propaganda on the right, we've got propaganda on the left, and we've got a great big problem in the middle that is not getting solved.
How do you think this will play out, Charlie?
I think it's interesting because it is being played out on a national scene, and it's sort of this debate about the Second Amendment. But of course the Delaware Constitution for the state of Delaware has the 20th Amendment, which literally gives an individual a self-right to own a firearm for recreation. I mean, that is a state of Delaware right. And I don't hear that being talked about, and how that plays out specifically in Delaware. And so there's a different standard nationally and in the state of Delaware. And I think that as that starts to become part of the dialogue that in the state, that may alter what we do while we're sort of waiting for the broader debate across the country. And the last part of it is, across the country you have 300 million handguns for 310 million Americans, or 300 million guns, that is a number that gets tossed out there, to 310 million Americans. They already exist. And so what you do going forward has to take into consideration the fact that, to a certain extent, degree, the barn door was open, the horses all got out, and so now you've got sort of moving pieces. And I don't know that any of that's been fully absorbed through both the left and the right's talking points.
Well, I don't like to play devil's advocate, but what if this legislation fails? Does Delaware look bad?
The legislation?
Yeah, if it fails, will we look bad as Delaware people?
I don't think that Delaware will look bad if the legislation fails, because I'm not sure that there is a consensus as to what should be done. I think the mental health issue is a huge piece. I mean, you even saw where John Carney said, "I have a shotgun that holds 5 rounds." Well, you can imagine somebody carrying 2 of those and a couple of handguns that each hold 10 rounds, and you could walk into it without, and with banning everything else, you could still walk into a facility carrying live ammo on your person, 30 rounds, and then you could change those clips in the handguns pretty quickly. So no, I don't think Delaware looks bad.
Okay. Well, earlier on the show, we had Lieutenant Governor Matt Dinn talking about the need for mental health issues in middle schools. Pretty much, do we think that I'm not going to disagree that this is something that we need to try. It's definitely a start, but what should we do after we do this? Is there some steps we need to take soon after the mental health counselors are
in middle schools?
Yes.
Well, I think that certainly having mental health counselors in middle schools could be beneficial, although we already have a structure within the education where we set up IEPs, individual education plans, for students who are having problems. So I mean, there's somewhat built into the system already the ability to get mental health counseling, not just in middle school, but in lower school or high school. The truth of the matter is that those IEPs are extremely difficult to get the school districts to implement, and the parents have to stay on it very hard. And I think that the regret here in the state of Delaware is, even if you put mental health counselors in all the schools, just like a few years ago we put math and English specialists in all the schools, and the grades didn't move, is what's the follow-through? What is making sure that the districts and the schools themselves actually are doing the job that has now been mandated to them? And I don't think Dover has an answer to that.
Well, I think also there's a bigger problem is when it's important that you identify children that are having trouble early, and mental health counseling is a good way to do that, because in middle school is when you're really beginning to see with some pronouncement the problems that are beginning to arise. But then it's the follow through with who do the children talk to, and what you find is that there aren't that many people for them to talk to. There is a severe lack of psychiatrists in particular in the entire state. All of the entire state of Delaware is considered underserved when it comes to psychiatric help, particularly child adolescent psychiatric help. And that's the end point. Once you identify the problems, now we know we've got a good system in place. Now we know that there are children that need help, and they need help in the following areas. And then you get to the end of that and you see, well, who do they talk to? That's really the nut that we haven't cracked yet.
So you're both saying that we just need to focus on the follow through in addition to...
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, in other news, let's talk about John Sigler, the head of the state Republican Party. You know, he recently put out a press release saying taxpayers are footing the bill for the governor's trips abroad. We know Governor Markell recently traveled to Switzerland as a member of the National Governors Conference, and now he's in India. But should the Republicans, as a party, should the Republicans really be focused on this?
Well, I guess I look at it that the governor's starting his second term, so he's had 4 years and reelected. And in his first 4 years, he did a fair amount of traveling, both domestic and foreign. And what do we have to show for it? We have millions of dollars spent on Fisker Automotive. We have millions of dollars spent that are now liabilities for Delaware ratepayers in power to Bloom Energy. We have tens of millions of dollars spent on the money center banks that really have just been slowly depleting the number of Delaware residents that work for them. So we have the same number of workers in Delaware today, employed people in Delaware today, as when he took office. So it hasn't been terribly successful. And what are you getting in Davos, Switzerland, that's going to help small businesses grow in Delaware? I think, frankly, the effort spent there was more, interviewing for future jobs for the governor than it was for developing benefit for Delaware.
I tend to disagree. I mean, I think along with sort of Charlie's side is my side. I think we have to look at, okay, not where he's traveling to, but what has he brought back to Delaware as a result of that travel. And we do have, I mean, being from Sussex County, I'm sensitive to the poultry industry. So we do have a Korean company which has now come in, and the jobs that would have been lost with Allen's Foods, that's very near and dear to my heart, have now been recouped with the Korean company. We've got an Indian company that's now come in Delaware City that has brought jobs into Delaware City, which everyone knows really needs jobs. And now we've got, I think the deal with the Moroccans for clementines at the Port of Wilmington has brought in another additional 100 jobs. So here we've got Korea, we've got India, we've got Morocco. My guess is he probably visited all those places, and hey, if it results in a good result back to Delaware, I say he have at it. Because even if he's using travel and being well traveled as kind of like the jumping off point to the next place where he's going to go,
yes, they're
they're not going to say, well, you're such a well traveled former governor, we're going to hire you. What they're going to say is, well, what did you actually get from that? How effective were you in taking that information and those contacts and then turning that into something that was helpful back to the people in your home state? That's what they're going to look at, and that's what I think the people in Delaware look at.
Well, I wish we had more time. It's always a pleasure talking to you both.